They made their final TV transmissions, and on May 26th, they re-entered Earth's atmosphere at the highest speed ever achieved by living human. Thanks to the efforts of the crew of Apollo 10, the moon was finally in our reach.
Roger, Sam, this is Houston. We copied that transmission. Thank you. This deal is going to be a fantastic thing. That's what the average space navigator looks like after 543 marks. You can observe a patch over one eye to help him adapt. Dean, how about me a few words in the microphone? Okay, Jack. I can't tell you what a rewarding and satisfying experience this has been. It's had its moments, as I said. I'm just thankful that through the medium of television we've been able to share it with so many people. 6,331. Still increasing. Downrange to Spice Point, 1,315 nautical miles.
Apollo 10 had been a complete and total dress rehearsal for what would be required to land on a foreign celestial body, with the exception of the landing itself. Its crew had recovered more orbital data than any previous robotic mission, and the high-definition maps of the lunar surface created as a result of this data allowed future crews to focus solely on the landing itself. After Apollo 10's success, a total of 3 moon rockets, 6 spacecraft, and 9 missions now stood by to fly to the moon on the drop of a hat, ready to attempt the first lunar landing. The world waited and held its breath as NASA began the countdown to the most famous space flight in human history.
Hammer sings on your tongue.
How to prep for a first date. Step 1, have a shaving accident. Step 2, fake shaving accident. Step 3, keep your cool because you booked your ride ahead. Introducing Uber Reserve. Get your ride right.
In 2015, there was a huge excitement in the space community. That is because, up until then, the best image we had of the Pluto system was this. Hubble also squinted its lens at Pluto, but it is so small and distant, the best it could see was a few blobs of color variation. But in 2015, this all changed. That is because, after a 9-year journey, the New Horizons space probe flew by the dwarf planet, giving us a detail and fidelity of Pluto and its moons like we had never seen before. So the question is, what did the New Horizons probe see and discover during its flyby of the Pluto system? And what has it been doing since the flyby? I'm Alex McColgan, and you're watching Astro. Stick with me in this video, and I will show you all the highlights from the New Horizons mission to the Pluto system and beyond. Let's first of all give you a quick bit of context in case you are new to Pluto, or it's been a while since you last heard about it. Pluto is a remarkably pretty, tiny world, much smaller than our moon. It's found in the Kuiper Belt, a dispersed belt of asteroid or comet-type objects beyond the orbit of Neptune. Pluto was the last of the traditional 9 planets to be explored. This was due to its distance from us, but also because, can you believe this, it wasn't considered a very interesting celestial object. Thankfully, the team behind the probe pushed hard for this mission to be approved, and in 2006, New Horizons was launched as part of NASA's New Frontier program for medium-budget space missions. The goal of the mission was to get to Pluto as soon as possible, and as such, New Horizons was the fastest launch ever, it being a light spacecraft on the most powerful rocket available at the time, a fully boosted Atlas V. It whizzed past the moon in only 9 hours. The Apollo missions took 10 times as long. On its way to Pluto, it used Jupiter as a gravity assist, which shaved 3 years off the arrival time. It also used Jupiter as a trial run for its systems, taking some remarkable videos and images of the planet and its moons. After this successful trial, New Horizons went into hibernation mode to prevent the wear and tear of its instruments. Leading up to its approach in 2015, the team turned the systems back online, and every day the spacecraft sent back images of the Pluto system. This was an incredibly exciting time for enthusiasts following the story. We began to get hints of what Pluto could possibly look like, and saw how different Pluto was from its biggest moon, Charon. Every day the resolution got higher and higher, and more details could be made out. Yes, there were other scientific goals for the mission, but the most interesting thing to me was what it looked like. Soon there could be seen what looked to be a heart shape on the dwarf planet. On the 14th of July, the New Horizons probe made its closest approach at only 12,500 kilometers from the surface of Pluto. However, mission controllers didn't get a look straight away. Firstly, the probe was too busy taking a lot of photos during the flyby to send anything back immediately. Once data transfer commenced, they had to deal with the slow uplink speed of only 1 kilobit per second. Further to that, there was a 4.5-hour latency between the spacecraft and the Earth. But what it saw and sent back was spectacular. Mountain ranges, ice plains, glaciers, and an atmosphere. It also had a good look at Pluto's moons. Let's go into detail. July 1969. Midst of a moist, sweltering summer season under the hot Florida sun, NASA is rapidly proceeding towards the countdown for the first of 3 attempts to land on the lunar surface before December 31st. The first attempt is Apollo 11. 11 is commanded by an all-veteran crew of spaceflight. Neil Armstrong cut his teeth on analyzing emergencies in the field firsthand,
was Aldrin last flew on Gemini 12, the final flight in that program. For his superior navigational skills, led his Patriot, Jim Lovell, to a successful docking with their Agena target.
more time. I'm not ready yet. I need time to do that.
bless you.
I need time to reflect. I must wait a moment. Time to do that. must wait a moment. I'm not ready yet. I must wait a moment.
Doing as fast as I can. You're the one who said it.
I need more time. I must wait a moment. I need time to do that. I need more time. I need time to do that. I need time to do that. I need more time.
a waste of our time. Too long. You're not going to end up going anywhere.
nice on there just now. Teal's nice. No, you're good. You're nothing like the girls outside, babe. There's not even a lip. You may feel a little bit of it, but visually you can't. Unless you're a midget. All my nails are like really nice and clear now. Wait, I don't know if I'm cutting out of here. But that was just really, really dark purple. I'm looking at her use as instead.
spacewalk on a 50-foot tether to retrieve a package from that mission's unshielded ATV. He will not be walking on the moon. Rather, he will stay in lunar orbit aboard the Apollo 11 command module, listening vigilantly to Armstrong and Aldrin as they attempt to make a landing. In the event they get stranded in orbit and need a rescue, or worse, are unable to make it back to the command module, designating Collins as the sole survivor of Apollo 11. The eyes of the world are upon the trio as they complete the final phases of their training and are entered into quarantine from the outside world. The public pressure and media attention is both exciting and exhausting. The three are training for the mission of a lifetime. The very nature of Apollo 11 and the high danger it entails means that this will be the final space flight for all three astronauts, regardless of whether or not it is successful. Risking the life of a member of the first lunar crew after successfully bringing them back home, it just won't happen. Being assigned to the first lunar landing is essentially a notice of retirement from the astronaut corps. They have one chance, and one chance alone, to make a successful landing. Everyone
Never actually heard this.
Are you going out or what?
I'm waiting for an answer.
From who?
Melissa canceled.
Yeah, I knew what he did.
So I asked Khadija.
Oh, I thought you already had plans with Khadija.
No, okay. Khadija asked me to hang out, and Malika asked me to hang out. What Malika wanted to do was more interesting, so I chose her. Of course, that means Malika canceled. Khadija went to her new boys. She's just getting home, so...
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were going to plan it, but you were like down with what to wear.
I'm just made up for the time.
Yeah, I like that dark blue one. You should stick with that. Like, still trying on other stuff. I plan to wear that out.
Oh, I'm not wearing that.
Oh, okay.
This rudimentary and primitive collection of sensors includes a retro-reflecting mirror for laser distance marking between the moon and the Earth, several local seismometers, and a radiometer. Armstrong and Aldrin are scheduled to walk outside their lander for a meager 160 minutes. The two spacecraft assigned to the fifth manned flight at Apollo are Command and Service Module number 107, nicknamed Columbia, and Lunar Module number 5, nicknamed Eagle. The world watches and holds its breath as the countdown to a launch on July 16, 1969, turns from weeks to days to hours.
Hey, Bubbles.
Can you undo it, please?
Watch the stuff on the ground.
Sure, I'll try to bunch of
The international paper company where good ideas grow on trees and
Eat that there. Just
got,
watch it.
It's got ash in it.
Yeah, it's from the joint. It's how big the joint is. Right?
Good morning. It's T-minus 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 53 seconds. And counting. Just an hour and a half. If all goes well, all 11 astronauts, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins, are to lift off from Path 39A out there. On the voyage man always has dreamed about. Man embarks today on history's greatest adventure. Here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, a massive, complex, pilot vehicle waits to launch 3 American explorers into space, into the future, toward the lunar surface. The dawn of this day heralds the dawning of a new era. Steps in man strides across the universe, and it begins. Acceleration, production, centuries old dreams beyond. Three men represent the spearhead of an effort that involves over 500,000 engineers and technicians, representing the dream of their nation, carrying with them the aspirations of an entire species.
Get it, boo-boos. Go get it.
On July 16, 1969, at 6 a.m., 3 astronauts wake up, prepare to embark on the most daring and iconic adventure upon which man has ever embarked. The non-stop, grenade launch to the moon's sea of tranquility. A large, flat, dry lava sea that marks millions of years ago. Non-stop these days.
Yeah, let's get down, baby. It's too dirty up there right now.
His personnel in the control room. All report they are closed for the mission. This has been reported to the test supervisor fellowship. Test supervisor now get the go. 5 minutes, 20 seconds and counting. Coming up shortly, that swing arm to its fully retracted position. This should occur at the 5-minute mark in the count. In the meantime, the lunar module telemetry has been powered down.
Clear.
wait a moment. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready.
This series could be huge for this reinforce.
We are releasing a lot of characters that players have really looking forward to.
New game modes that players have not seen before. This is all part of a
I
huge
must wait a moment.
interlocking story. Giving players to This is basically the next big baddie for most players. Apocalypse series, the first one. He's immortal. He's existed for thousands of years.
Probably the most ambitious thing that you could get rid of in the game's art.
Apocalypse's first phase counts his army.
Each of the four horsemen are going to be released as you are journeying towards acquiring.
The first horseman that we're using is Moyabe.
Sound. Guidance system goes on internal at 17 seconds, leading up to the official sequence at 8.9 seconds. We're approaching the 60-second mark on the Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus
Roger, 11, we'll pass that on, and it certainly looks like you're well on your way now.
With the translator ejection maneuver completed right on schedule, Collins docked Columbia with Eagle perfectly on the first try, and subsequently ejected it from the third stage of their massive launch vehicle. The practice and rehearsing of the previous missions, Apollos 7, 8, 9, and 10, were beginning to pay off. Apollo 11 then settled down into the 75-hour coast to the moon. The crew partook in a couple television broadcasts, some scheduled and some improvised, to carefully inspect the docking probe and drone to ensure they would work once in orbit of the moon.
We see a real display now. little more than a half Earth. We're looking at the eastern Pacific Ocean. In the north half of the top half of the screen, we can see North America, Alaska, United States, Canada, Mexico, and Central America. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow. We can see the oceans with a definite blue cast, see white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth, and the coastline. Pick out the western U.S., San Joaquin Valley, the Sierra Mountain Range, the peninsula of Baja California, and see subcloud formations over southeastern U.S.
Samantha, you have to be back
There's
for
one definite mild storm southwest of Alaska, looks like about 500,000 miles, and another very minor storm showing the south end of the screen near the a long way south of the equator, probably 45 degrees or more south latitude.
I know she was close.
You can pick out
if I wasn't super high, I would even drive you about
the landforms pretty well. The greens do not show up very well. Some greens showing along the northwestern coast of the United States and northwestern coast of Canada.
This is Houston. We're getting a dome view out the window now.
Unfortunately, we only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera, so your view now is probably better than ours is.
Roger, we copy. 11, Houston, if you could comply, we'd like to see some smiling faces up there. If you could give us some interior views, I'm sure everybody'd like to see you, over.
Okay, we'll reconfigure the TV for that.
Roger.
At 80 hours into the flight, Apollo 11 darted behind the moon, out of contact with NASA, and prepared for the command and service module engine burn that would place the combined spacecraft into a circular orbit above their landing site.
And we're showing about 10 minutes and 30 seconds to LOS. I would like to remind you to enable the BD roll on the auto RCS switches, over. Roger, and confirm you want PCM low going over the hill, over. It's affirmative, 11.
The tired astronauts refined their orbit and went to sleep. Then, at 95 hours, the day of destiny came.
Apollo 11. Good morning from the black team. Good morning. Good morning. We've got about 2 minutes to LOS here, Mike. Oh, fine, man. You guys wake up early. Yeah, you're about 2 minutes earlier on the wake up. Looks like you're really sawing them away. You're right. 11 Houston, for planning purposes, you can go ahead and take the monocular into the limb with you.
Armstrong and Aldrin waved goodbye to Collins one last time and sealed the hatch between the two spacecraft. Columbia and Eagle subsequently undocked and the two crews examined each other. It was time to land on the moon.
Eagle Houston, we rig you now. You're a go for PDI, over. Roger, understand. Stabilization control circuit breakers. Thank you, gimbal AC closed. Thank you, gimbal AC closed. Circuit breaker. And override off. Gimbal enable. State scale 25. Eagle Houston, your alignment is going, Yags. On my mark, 3:30 till ignition. Roger. Mark, 3:30 till ignition. Roger, copy. Translation for jet. Balance couple on.
Well, I enjoyed being in the command module by myself. It was a happy little home. All the machinery was working properly, and my concerns were not within the command module, but simply that something might go wrong with the LAM, with the lunar module, and these two guys might get stuck on the surface of the moon. That was my main concern.
Current altitude about 46,000 feet, continuing to descend. Lights on. Dips on. Roger, dips on. 1, 0. Ignition 10%.
Let's wait till they get through throttle. They should be through. Go ahead, try it.
Houston, we've lost them. Tell them to go aft on the elbow. Eagle, we got you now. It's looking good, over. GTC go. GTC go. Flight control,
You're getting a little fluctuation in the AC holding now.
Roger.
That's the meter radio.
Stand by. Looking good. You're still looking good. It's coming up 3 minutes.
He thinks you're a little long downrange. That's right. I think we confirm that. We confirm that, Roger. Okay, we got good lock on. We don't lock them. Altitude lights out. LH is minus 2,900.
Roger, we copy.
At the earth, right out our front window. Houston, you're looking at our door. Good. That's affirmative. Alarm.
Looking good, that's over.
1202. 1202. Looks like it's
Good radar data. Altitude about 32,500 feet.
Yeah, same thing we had.
Right, Metro.
So that's all now. 6 plus 25. Give us the reading on the 1202 program alarm.
We're going that alarm. Roger, we got it. We're going that alarm.
As Neil and Buzz monitored the landing procedure, their computer began giving them master alarms indicating work overload. It could not handle both the landing and rendezvous radar programs at one time.
Whether you're breaking a sweat or breaking the laws of gravity, Cliff Bar is the ultimate energy bar, purposefully crafted with a unique blend of ingredients. Because the more good you put in, the more great you get out.
The flight controllers on the ground were helpless. All they could do was listen as the two astronauts struggled against time. But before that problem was over, Neil looked out the LEM window and realized that the guidance computer was steering them straight towards a football stadium-sized crater with car-sized boulders inside. Neil immediately took manual control and leveled off his descent, flying at a high rate of speed above the lunar surface. As Neil looked desperately for a safe place to land, his fuel level went down and down and down.
150 feet down at 4. 30 feet down. Thanks, very well velocity. 200 feet down, 3.5. 47 forward. Hold up. 1.5 down. 70. Looks like a good area. Happy paddle up there. 50 feet down at 2.5. 18 forward. 11 minutes. Altitude velocity light. 8.5 down. 20 feet. 15 forward. Altitude forward coming down nicely. 200 feet. 4.5 down. 5.5 down. 150 feet. 6.5 down. 5.5 down. 9 forward. Good. 20 feet. 100 feet, 3.5 down, 9 forward. 5%. On a right. 875 feet. That's looking good down ahead. 6 forward. 50 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. Good. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up the sun. 3 feet, 2.5 down. Big shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, just to the right. 6, 9.5. 30 seconds. Forward. 6. Contact right.
Lunar Module 5 Eagle hit the moon with only 17 seconds of descent propellant remaining. All of a sudden, there was silence.
Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Shut down. Control, both auto, descent, command override off. We're there. Engine on off. 413 is in. With that shut down. We copy you down, Eagle. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, point. Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Okay. You're looking good here. Okay, T1, stay no stay. Retro. Stay. Righto. Stay. Guidance. Stay. Patrol. Stay. Telcom. Stay. GNC. Stay. Ecom. Stay. Surgeon. Stay. Capcom, we're stay for T1.
Just under 13 minutes after lighting their rocket in lunar orbit, the dream of John Fitzgerald Kennedy and an entire nation for nearly a decade had been accomplished by Apollo 11. Mankind had succeeded in landing humans in the form of 2 American astronauts on the surface of the moon. But the excitement was far from over. After stabilizing Eagle and ensuring that nothing had broken in the landing, Armstrong and Aldrin scheduled for an early extravehicular activity. At 10:39 p.m., July 20th, Eastern Daylight Time. As Neil climbed out of the hatch, he tugged on a small string connected to a black and white, slow-scan television camera mounted on the side of Lunar Module Eagle. 600 million people on planet Earth tuned in to see two of their comrades set foot on another world.
And we're getting a picture on the TV. Okay, got a good picture, huh? There's a great deal of contrast in it, and currently it's upside down on our monitor, but we can make out a fair amount of detail. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked. Getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up. Roger, we copy. It's a pretty good little jump. At the foot of the ladder, the LEM footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. Although the surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. And step off the LEM now.
Regardless, for our generation, it's just going to be a bunch of old people sitting in front of their fucking computers screens playing video games until they fucking die. It's serious. Or like living in a VR world where you probably are at that time. Like that's totally gonna happen. I wonder how long it will be. Let's say a first week. You're not allowed to sell Final Fantasy. No. Not allowed. Guys, we need to clean up all of the toys. They're all over the floor. Yeah, your toys are all over the floor. Go for a run, baby. Go for a run. Go, go, go. Where is it? Go get it, baby. Run, run, run. Go, baby, go. Good girl. There it is. There it is. There's your fishy. Fishy, fishy, fishy. Goose. This. Deal with this. Deal with this. These are the ones that are staying out. That's the one. Okay. The books are going back. They're not allowed in there. Books mean no play. Even with the box. Right here, so you can still play in there.
As you stand at your window, looking out at a sky filled with dark clouds that are pouring down sheets of rain and hail, suddenly it happens. A twisting column of gray descends from the clouds. At first, it's just hanging there, suspended above the land. But it soon reaches down and makes contact with the ground. At the same time, it turns even darker as it picks up dirt and debris. If you're lucky, you make it to a shelter before you can witness the immense swirling winds pulling up animals, cars, and buildings in its wake. This harsh reality can occur anywhere in the world. However, by a wide margin, most tornadoes happen in the United States, more than if you combined the yearly average number of tornadoes in every country in the rest of the world. The US is also the only country to regularly experience tornadoes that reach the highest classification of violent, which cause the highest percentage of deaths. Each year in the United States, there are over 1,000 reported tornadoes, and on average, these result in around 80 casualties. But some years, it's much worse. Like in 2011, the 2011 super outbreak was the largest, costliest, and one of the deadliest tornado outbreaks ever recorded, taking place in the southern, midwestern, and northeastern United States from April 25th to 28th. It resulted in roughly $12 billion in damages and left an estimated
Samantha?
For such a well-known phenomenon, we know
I have the croissants that are really, really old on the counter. Can you throw them out on your way down?
how they form is crucial for developing better tornado prediction models.
Thanks. I'm going to be cleaning out the cupboards.
Risk their own lives by getting up close and personal with these violent storms, all in an effort to determine exactly what's happening in and around the tornado. Most tornadoes begin with a supercell, a storm with a persistent rotating updraft at its core. Supercells form due to a particular combination of winds, when wind speed and direction are different at different altitudes. This is called wind shear, when wind at ground level is blowing one direction and wind higher in the atmosphere is blowing another direction. It can cause a horizontal tube of air to form. Then, as warm, humid air rises and cool air falls, the horizontal tube of rotating air can be pushed to become a vertical one, called a vortex or a mesocyclone, which can have a diameter of 5 to 20 kilometers. At this point, the whole storm starts rotating, and the supercell is born. This type of storm is the parent of most tornadoes. Near the ground, the mesocyclone can be narrowed by the strong updraft. This process, called vortex stretching, speeds up the circulation. This creates a funnel cloud. Then, the downwind
Krispy Kreme blueberry chicken sandwich. It's one of the foods at the CNE. Cheeseburger ice cream. Watermelon burger. I might actually have to try some of this shit. Flying laser. Digital border plane flying laser. Control the group to see if that where it falls down. Good girl, Clea. Boo-boos. Let's not do that, okay? Clea. Don't you like Harry Potter? Clea. Clea, if you ate that, you would die. Oh, that's why. Clea. Hey. No, no, no. It's not for you.
Measured. The tornado with the highest wind speed began in bridge vorticity. One way this could happen is by encountering a cold flow of wind from a rainstorm called an outflow. But of course, it's what happens between its formation and dissipation that's really important. How much damage did it cause? How many lives did it take? Just how destructive was it? damage is often the only way scientists can estimate how strong a tornado was, since it's rare that they're able to take a direct wind speed measurement. And sometimes the damage is absolutely catastrophic. Out of those that have had their wind speed directly measured, the tornado with the highest wind speed began in Bridge Creek, Oklahoma on May 3rd, 1999, during a massive tornado outbreak involving over 70 tornadoes. This particular EF4, EF5 tornado traveled across heavily populated areas in Oklahoma, and with wind speeds topping 512 kilometers per hour, it completely obliterated over 200 homes over the course of 1.5 hours, killing 36 people. It was classified as an EF5 because the EF5 category has no upper limit, but its wind speeds were so fast, some scientists think it should have fallen into its own new category, an EF6. The problem with creating an EF6 category is that the vast majority of structures are simply gone at the EF5 rating. And besides the rare tornado like the Bridge Creek War tornado that has its wind speed directly measured, the rating comes from the destruction it leaves behind. And complete and total obliteration looks the same if the wind was 350 kilometers per hour or 550 kilometers per hour. Scientists believe that theoretically the fastest tornado possible on Earth would be 611 kilometers per hour. The Bridge Creek War tornado was not far off. But while the Bridge Creek War tornado certainly was devastating, it was not even close to the deadliest. On April 26, 1989, a single tornado in Bangladesh took at least 1,300 lives and left 80,000 homeless. It was estimated to be an EF4 tornado with wind speeds of 338 to 418 kilometers per hour. The devastation was so complete that except for some skeletons of trees, there were no signs that there had ever been any standing structures. And the deadliest tornado in U.S. history was the Tri-State tornado on March 18, 1925, which resulted in a death toll of a whopping 695 people. One tornado killing almost twice as many as the super outbreak in 2011, which was made up of 300 separate tornadoes. The Tri-State tornado's name comes from its journey from southern Missouri to Illinois to Indiana, totaling 350 kilometers. This also made it the tornado with the longest path, which took about 3.5 hours. During this time, it destroyed 15,000 homes, earning it a ranking of an EF5. But with a maximum width of about 1.5 to 2.5 kilometers, neither the Tri-State nor the Bridge Creek tornadoes were the biggest tornadoes in history. The widest ever recorded reached an absolutely massive width of 4.2 kilometers. This occurred around El Reno, Oklahoma on May 31st, 2013, and lasted about 40 minutes. Luckily, it remained mainly in rural areas and was rated an EF3. So while winds reached 484 kilometers per hour, its damage was limited. Wide tornadoes aren't usually the deadliest. However, this one did result in the deaths of 8 individuals, 3 of which were the first storm chasers ever to be killed in a tornado. These deadly events are a bone-chilling reminder of just how ruthless nature can be. For anyone who lives where tornadoes frequent, all they can hope for is a fair warning to get themselves somewhere safe. Currently, meteorologists can't identify weather conditions that could result in a severe storm days in advance. But determining exactly when or where a tornado will form is much more difficult. A lot of that difficulty is due to the relatively small scale of the tornado. While storms can cover large areas, even multiple states, tornadoes are usually less than a kilometer wide. Once the storm forms, predicting a tornado becomes a lot easier. Using Doppler radar systems, meteorologists can watch a storm and provide a risk assessment for a certain area. Something like there's a 20% chance of a tornado in these 40 kilometers. Most often, tornado warnings made by the National Weather Service turn out to be false alarms. This happens up to 80% of the time. Of course, it's always better to be safe than sorry, especially when you only have a few minutes to prepare when a tornado does end up forming. But can we do better?
Oh, stop glorifying him. It was fucking crazy. God, every fucking episode.
Is no easy task, and scientists had once given up on it. That was until May 7th, 2002, when Tim Samaras deployed a probe of his own design that survived a direct hit from an EF3 tornado while recording changes in pressure, wind speed and direction, and air temperature and relative humidity. With this device, he and his team went on to collect video and data from inside several tornadoes, providing the scientific community with invaluable information. But collecting this data is just one piece of the puzzle, and scientists are still developing better detection methods and warning systems. These include new types of radar technology, such as phased array radar, which can scan the entire sky in less than 1 minute, 5 times faster than current radar systems. Scientists are also building better forecasting prediction models. These use current weather and radar data to simulate what the atmosphere will look like in the future. To make them more accurate, scientists are trying to increase their resolution, because not only are tornadoes small compared to thunderstorms, but what's happening inside a tornado, changes in temperature, pressure, humidity, and wind, is occurring on the molecular level. And while a model of every molecule involved in a storm may not be possible right now, we may one day have the computing capacity to do so. But even if we are never able to predict a tornado days ahead of time, gaining just an hour's notice could save countless lives. Thanks for watching this Nebula. Be sure to check out our Nebula original series, Becoming Human, and our recent Nebula upload of the Orcas of Eden, when orcas and humans worked together.
Need more time.
Mike, please see. I'm right here, baby. Yeah. Meow. 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 Meow.
I'm not ready. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. I need more time.
We didn't get anything, right?
Uh-huh.
Right on. Hopefully I can see the movie in the morning.
Uh-huh. Sure you will.
Love you.
Love you. Have a good time. But yeah, I'm right here, baby. Clea? Clea, I'm right here. Hi! Come here, boo-boos. Clea. Clea. It's okay. Hi. No boo-boos. You have to run away for a bit. Yeah. Hi.
shielding itself from the saturating light of our star, it turned its massive golden mirrors to the universe, focusing the light it gathered onto cryogenically cooled sensors, peering back to the cold, distant, redshifted light emitted 13.5 billion years ago in the early stages of our universe. An incredible human achievement. But what if we created a massive radio space telescope? We could peer even further back in time, detecting signals
Leah, get down, baby, okay? Leah, get down. Hey. Get down.
I must wait a moment.
Yeah. Not while I'm cooking.
Good girl, thank you. In August of 2014, a series of videos began emerging online from the Middle East that took the entire internet by storm. The first were a series of videos coming from a previously nearly unknown group of rebels bulldozing and tearing apart the physical border between Iraq and Syria. The group responsible for producing these videos have recently just declared itself as the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, or ISIL, better known in the Western world as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. They were by then in the late summer of 2014 at nearly the apex of their power. 2003. After Saddam Hussein and his Arab nationalist Ba'ath Party was toppled from power, the United States found itself as an occupying power in the country and set about on a process they called de-Ba'athification, a policy deliberately named after the denazification process that the Allied powers adopted and pressed upon occupied post-war Germany and Austria following the Second World War. Former members of the Ba'ath Party in Iran moved from the position of authority and banned from any future employment of the government and the public sector in order to display the Ba'ath Party's influence and threat over the country that had existed for decades. The problem with de-Ba'athification was that it was applied far more ruthlessly and far deeper into Iraqi society than denazification was applied into German and Austrian society. The de-Ba'athification policies in Iraq extended all the way down the apparatus of society to even the school teachers and civil servants. Since members of the Ba'ath Party in Iraq were overwhelmingly Arab Sunni Muslims, many Sunni majority areas of the country were left with merely one or two school teachers, or even none at all as a result of the policy. Many of the civil servants who helped run the country for decades under Saddam were suddenly fired and barred from any future employment prospects. But the single greatest misstep that the American occupiers made was the decision to completely dissolve the entire Iraqi military on the 23rd of May, 2003. The Iraqi military under Saddam had been an intensely proud and veteran organization that had fought multiple wars against Iran in the 1980s, against Kuwait and the Gulf Coalition in the 1990s, and then against the United States-led coalition in 2003. And during the fighting of the 2003 invasion, the United States had promised Iraqi soldiers who surrendered that they would be taken care of financially and treated well in order to give its war of them to simply choose not to fight. The Iraqi military apparatus consisted of hundreds of thousands of experienced men who the United States initially planned to use to help rebuild the country after the war had concluded. But on the 23rd of May, just within 2 days of President George
Stop.
W.
Camera time.
end major combat operations in Iraq, the order came down from high to immediately dismiss all 600,000 Iraq soldiers without any compensation for pensions. 600,000 Iraqi soldiers sold themselves without a job, no future, and no employment prospects. Only left on their hands after a year of the matches just like the civil servants and the school teachers who previously fought in the Ba'ath Party. Most of Saddam's Iraqi soldiers were also
Later on.
Death left a vacuum in leadership that needed to be filled. In the months that followed, as AQI struggled to find a new leader who could command the same level of respect and obedience as al-Zarqawi, they also faced mounting pressure from U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq, who had been extensively targeting insurgents and AQI operatives with more and more success. But by October of 2006, AQI had finally begun to rebrand itself as something completely different and separate from the mere offshoot of al-Qaeda that it had used to be. They were now beginning to declare themselves as something far, far more grander. The acting government of a newly self-declared caliphate, an Islamic theocratic empire not based on geography or borders, but on the authority of the Islamic faith itself and the laws of the 7th century. An empire claiming the authority over all Muslims worldwide, regardless of their geographic location. They were now calling themselves the Islamic State in Iraq, or ISI. From 2006, following al-Zarqawi's death to 2010, ISI was essentially led by two different men, Abu Ayyub al-Masri and Abu Omar al-Baghdadi. Al-Masri was an Egyptian national who had been a member of al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, similar to al-Zarqawi's origin, while Omar al-Baghdadi had been an officer in the Iraqi military under the Saddam regime. Under their leadership, ISI continued their brutal attacks on both military and civilian targets all throughout Iraq. It was also during this time that ISI began to develop a stronger online presence, which would later become a key ingredient to their propaganda, notoriety, and development as an organization. organization, but the reigns of al-Musri and Omar al-Baghdadi were short-lived. After several false claims that they had been killed throughout the years, U.S. and Iraqi government forces finally tracked them down in April of 2010, when they were both killed just a few weeks apart from each other. But this time, there was much less of a scramble to find new leadership as there had been after the death of al-Zarqawi. This time, ISI quickly came under the leadership of a religious scholar, who would go on to be recognized as the face of ISI and eventually ISIS for the next decade. Ibrahim Awad al-Badri, better known by his adopted name of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Born in 1971 in Samarra, Iraq, al-Baghdadi had a highly religious upbringing and allegedly even received a doctorate degree in Islamic jurisprudence, and spent several years as an imam. But the United States invasion of his country in 2003 was apparently the event that radicalized him, and he shortly thereafter became involved with AQI. He became the leading expert on Islamic Sharia law for AQI and later ISI, and was allegedly responsible for providing the medieval-era theological justifications for the organization's horrific atrocities. Then, once he became the leader of the organization in 2010, his deep and scholarly knowledge of Islam appealed greatly to new recruits. And while ISI had always been very violent, al-Baghdadi's leadership style was defined by his immense brutality and willingness to use extreme violence and any other means to achieve the organization's objectives. He was known for his ability to emotionally inspire his followers and for his tactical mind in the field of battle. And he was also a master propagandist, taking the group's social media use and presence to newer heights. But it wasn't just al-Baghdadi's new leadership style that would catapult ISI to global attention and infamy. There were also world events happening within Iraq and very far from Iraq that would do that as well. In 2011, exhausted after 8 years of occupation and fighting against an insurgency, most U.S. forces withdrew from Iraq, and the reins of control were fully passed on to the newly established Republic of Iraq, and Iraq's first democratically elected president following the fall of Saddam, Nouri al-Maliki. Al-Maliki was a Shia Muslim who had spent decades coordinating resistance to the Saddam regime. He had received a death sentence and fled the country in exile for more than 24 years, which he spent coordinating anti-Saddam guerrilla activities within Iraq and developing close relationships with the Islamic Revolutionary regime in Iran and the Ba'athist Assad regime in Syria, both of which wanted to see Saddam's primarily Sunni and Arab nationalist regime toppled. Al-Maliki returned to Iraq following the U.S. invasion and toppling of Saddam from power, and was later sworn in as the president of the country in May of 2006. But after the United States withdrew from the country, al-Maliki quickly became more and more authoritarian and despotic. Sunni government officials and military officers in Iraq were fired without cause, and some were even jailed. He then aligned himself and the Iraqi state ever closer to Iran, and the Iranian-backed and supported Shiite militias operating within Iraq, stoking the fragile sectarian tensions in Iraq between the majority Shia and the minority Sunni, and infuriating Sunni governments opposed to Iran like Saudi Arabia. Al-Maliki increasingly centralized power around himself, and began increasingly being viewed as an Iranian-backed agent of power in Iraq, helping to bring Iran's Shia Muslim Islamic revolution to the country, a situation that Saddam's regime and army had spent decades fiercely resisting and fighting back against. More and more Sunni Arabs in the country were growing alarmed, resentful, and disenfranchised. And around the same time, the Arab Spring and its wave of revolution was also beginning to rip across the Middle East and North Africa as well. By early 2013, ISI saw a unique opportunity in the chaos that was developing within Iraq's neighbor to the west, Syria. Bashar al-Assad, the pro-Iranian dictator of Syria, was struggling with containing a rebellion against him in the early days of what we now know of as the Syrian Civil War. The border between Iraq and Syria had never been very strong to begin with and generally ran through extremely sparsely populated desert. And so, capitalizing on the chaos that the new civil war in Syria provided, and the fact that the Syrian security forces were no longer really manning the border with Iraq at all, and were fighting much bigger enemies within the country, the Islamic State in Iraq decided to expand their operations by crossing the border into Syria, and in so doing, became the newly rebranded Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. In the beginning of this new theater of operations, ISIS was merely one of many rebel Islamist factions fighting against each other and the forces of the Syrian government and its allies. But ISIS's rapid rise above the rest of them to the top was aided by a combination of factors, ranging from its superior military prowess, its sheer fanaticism and zeal, its ability to exploit tensions among rival factions, and its incredibly effective use of propaganda to gain support among local communities. But above all was ISIS's unparalleled brutality and willingness to commit extreme violence in pursuit of its goals. They declared that all the other Islamist rebels operating in Syria, including their former overlords in Al-Qaeda, were heretics and takfir who deserved to be killed immediately. Anybody else who encountered ISIS, regardless of their ideology and background, needed to be prepared to fight to the death in order to stay independent, because ISIS was certainly willing to fight to the death themselves. In the early months of 2014, ISIS launched a campaign into Syria to capture that country's sixth largest city, Raqqa, which was home to 220,000 people prior to the civil war breaking out, and was a major transit point between Iraq and Syria. While ISIS was certainly considered a major threat at that time, most people didn't believe that the group would have been capable of capturing a major city as large and well-defended as Raqqa. The city had somewhat recently been captured by Syrian opposition forces the year before, and they had enough time to dig in and fortify their positions. But ISIS began their own attack on the city anyway, against the Syrian opposition forces that were defending it. First by attacking the military bases and checkpoints that surrounded the city, and then gradually by expanding their control over the surrounding countryside. In March of 2014, ISIS began their major assault on the city core itself, with fighters storming into Raqqa from several different directions. The Syrian opposition forces stationed within Raqqa quickly found themselves outgunned and overwhelmed, and within a matter of days of ISIS first breaking into the city, Raqqa had fallen yet again. The city would quickly be self-declared as ISIS's new capital city and base of operations. Departments were established to run local government services and collect taxes, showing that ISIS wasn't just a fighting organization, but a truly aspiring government. But the government that ISIS aspired to be and enforce over its new subjects was perhaps the most ruthlessly totalitarian in all of modern times. All forms of music, arts, and sports were immediately banned. All non-Sunni Muslims were compelled to convert under penalty of death or exile. Blasphemy, witchcraft, and sorcery all became arbitrary crimes that could be met with the death penalty. Men were required to visit their local mosque 5 times a day to pray. Women were required to be completely covered head to toe at all times while in public. Being revealed as any member of the LGBT+ community was an immediate death sentence. Adultery became a crime punishable by death. A totalitarian religious police force was created to patrol the streets in search of even the most minor of infractions to these new totalitarian laws, which would be met with the most extreme form of punishments. With the invocation of medieval 8th century laws, violators of crimes both large and small and both children and adults would be taken to the public town square and beheaded, crucified, burned alive, thrown from tall buildings, stoned to death, or dismembered and mutilated in front of crowds of onlookers as if the world had been sent back in time thousands of years. ISIS was also able to use their newly captured capital in Raqqa as a base to launch further offensives from into both Syria and Iraq, seizing control over even larger swaths of territory and further establishing their totalitarian regime. The group also used Raqqa as their hub for their foreign fighter recruitment, using social media to attract thousands of new recruits to come and join the cause from all across the world. ISIS's well-produced and edited videos were directly targeted at young, disenfranchised, and hopeless Muslim men from all around the world, who were desperate for a purpose and a sense of adventure, and furious at their present situation in life. New recruits began to flock to Raqqa and ISIS-controlled areas from all across the Muslim world and Europe. At its height, ISIS's foreign fighter force of men coming from beyond Syria and Iraq was estimated to number more than 30,000 strong. Men who came from dozens of countries from all around the world in order to fight for the newly declared caliphate. But the foreign fighters weren't the only ones who were coming to join with ISIS. The group's expansion into Syria was also buoyed by its ability to tap into already existing networks of Islamist militants, rebels, and foreign fighters who had similarly been drawn into the conflict out of religious conviction and a desire for purpose and adventure. Similarly to how AQI had once pulled in disgruntled former Iraqi soldiers during the 2000s, ISIS was now appealing to disgruntled and disenfranchised Syrian soldiers and civilians as well. The Syrian regime had long been ruled and dominated by the Assad family and their branch of Alawite Shia-adjacent Muslims, who dominated the country's military and security apparatuses despite making up only about 15% of the overall Syrian population. The majority Sunni Muslims of the country often felt disenfranchised and disadvantaged, and the Assad regime's more secular nature was overtly hostile towards radical Islamism as a political movement. The 1982 Hama massacre was still fresh in many Syrian Sunni Islamists' memory. Back then, the Syrian army besieged the city of Hama that was the home base of the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria and their Sunni Islamist uprising against the regime. Under direct orders from the president of Syria himself, the largely Alawite Shia Syrian army broke into the city and then massacred in a matter of weeks up to 40,000 of the city's civilians. An unparalleledly bloody action that remains the single deadliest act of violence ever perpetrated by an Arab state upon its own population in modern history. So, yeah, a lot of Sunni Islamists in Syria didn't like the Assad regime, and ISIS was highly successful at appealing to their resentments and angers and convincing many of them to just join. And many of these new recruits had military training either in the Syrian or Iraqi armed forces, and so they were able to bring with them tactics, strategy, discipline, and order that ISIS was further able to use to their advantage. And while ISIS's capture of Raqqa had significant geopolitical implications, it wasn't even the biggest city that ISIS would capture in 2014. ISIS had spent much of the previous year sending hit squads into Iraq to carry out assassinations of key leaders and military officers who would have otherwise helped resist against them. Even before capturing Raqqa, ISIS had managed to seize control over the cities of Fallujah and Ramadi within Iraq. But shortly after Raqqa fell in March of 2014 in Syria, ISIS redirected their attention back towards Iraq, and they came storming across the border. ISIS trucks and militants successfully blitzkrieged across Iraq's sparsely populated Anbar province in the west. And by June of 2014, they launched their offensive on the city of Mosul, the second largest city in the whole of Iraq, home to more than 1.5 million people. The defending Iraqi army troops there were, in theory, larger in number and better armed, but had rock-bottom morale due to poor and ineffective leadership, and were suffering from psychological terror after viewing videos of ISIS brutally beheading and executing Iraqi soldiers who they had previously captured. The defending Iraqi army in Mosul collapsed. Within only a matter of days, ISIS found themselves in control over Iraq's second largest city, and that sent shockwaves around the world. While the US had largely ended its military presence in Iraq 3 years previously in 2011, they had a huge role in training up the new Iraqi security forces, and perhaps more to the point, they had also completely armed them to the teeth with the latest advanced American weapons and firepower. After Raqqa was taken by ISIS in Syria, many just chalked it up to being a byproduct of the internal chaos going on in Syria. But while nobody exactly thought that Iraq was a utopia, the idea that a country that had a large US military presence just 3 years earlier was now losing major cities to a terror group was nearly unthinkable. And as the Iraqi army routed and dissolved, they left behind copious amounts of their American-supplied weapons and supplies for ISIS to capture as well. Caches of American assault rifles, ammunition, rocket launchers, and even US Humvees, APCs, and tanks were now all falling into their arsenal. And then they further helped themselves to hundreds of millions of dollars they seized from Mosul's several banks. In short, the capture of Mosul was a veritable bonanza for ISIS as an organization, and they were now the most well-armed, well-funded, and successful radical Islamist organization in history. As ISIS advanced rapidly across Iraq, there were also several former soldiers of Saddam's army who decided to join them. The Sunni militias in Iraq were being attacked by the Shiite militias in the country that were being financed and bankrolled by Iran, and the Iraqi Prime Minister, al-Maliki, a Shia himself, was increasingly being viewed by many of the Sunni Muslims of Iraq as an Iranian puppet. Increasingly, many of Saddam's former Sunni Muslim soldiers saw ISIS as the new leading force fighting back against the encroaching Iranian influence in the country, and many of them were extremely hungry for revenge. On the 12th of June, 2014, just 2 days after ISIS captured Mosul, ISIS launched a further attack on an Iraqi Air Force academy called Camp Spiker in the city of Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown further to the south, where there were several thousand young and unarmed Iraqi army cadets present. ISIS captured the camp and most of the army cadets, and then separated the Sunni Muslims from the non-Sunni. Then, they loaded up all of the non-Sunni cadets, most of whom were Shia Muslims, onto trucks, and then drove them to a former palace of Saddam's nearby on the banks of the Tigris River. It was there that in a single day, ISIS militants massacred by gunfire around 1,700 mostly young Shia Muslim Iraqi army cadets, who were shoved into mass graves or dumped into the Tigris River in a horrifying scene that resembled the Waffen-SS death squad operations on the Eastern Front in World War II. The Camp Speicher massacre, as it would later be called, represented the single largest mass execution that ISIS would ever carry out, and the second deadliest single act of terrorism in modern history, only surpassed by the September 11th attacks of 2001. Many of the men who carried the atrocity out were later revealed to have been former Iraqi Ba'ath Party members, or soldiers who had fought for Saddam's army, and who then decided to join with ISIS after their invasion out of a desire for revenge against the Shia. 36 of the men who were allegedly responsible for carrying out the massacre were later captured and hanged by the Iraqi government for war crimes 2 years later, in 2016. After the fall of Mosul, an estimated 500,000 of the city's residents made the difficult decision to flee from the city and become refugees rather than remain under ISIS's well-known totalitarian rule. ISIS's control over the city also mattered a lot because about an hour north of downtown Mosul is the Mosul Dam. Located on the Tigris River, this is the largest dam in Iraq and one of the largest dams in the entire Middle East, and as such, is an immensely critical source of water and electricity for most of northern Iraq. But the dam was built back in the 1980s during the Saddam era upon a layer of gypsum, a soft mineral that has a tendency to dissolve whenever it comes into contact with water, which is of course everywhere around a dam. As such, the dam has been plagued by maintenance problems and structural issues pretty much ever since it was built. It requires nearly continuous maintenance to plug up new leaks that appear with cement. More than 50,000 tons worth of material have been injected by the Iraqi government into the dam to plug up the leaks since it was completed in 1986. And 24 machines are required to be continuously running to pump cement into the dam's base. A report back in 2006 by the United States Army Corps of Engineers infamously concluded that, quote, in terms of internal erosion potential of the foundation, the Mosul Dam is the most dangerous dam in the world. That report further concluded that were the dam to collapse in a worst-case scenario, the biblical flood of water it would unleash down the Tigris would bury Mosul beneath 20 meters of water, and then Baghdad further downstream the Tigris with 4.6 meters of water, resulting in an estimated death toll of around 500,000 people. Were the dam to fall under the control of ISIS after their capture of Mosul, the necessary constant maintenance on the dam by trained and experienced engineers would almost certainly cease, and the dam's structural integrity would inevitably degrade. The dam could also become the scene of fighting, attacks, and explosions, which could further compromise the dam's stability and lead to the worst-case scenario of flooding downstream Mosul and Baghdad. The area surrounding the dam at the time was being guarded by the Kurds in their autonomous zone in northern Iraq. But with ISIS now armed with heavy U.S.-supplied weapons, the Kurds were no match for them on their own, and were eventually beaten back away from the dam. On the 7th of August, 2014, the Mosul Dam as well was captured by ISIS. At the same time, ISIS forces were continuing the jihadi blitzkrieg across north-central Iraq in their trucks and recently captured heavy armor and tanks from Mosul. By late June, ISIS forces had punched all the way to being within a mere 25 kilometers away from the Baghdad International Airport. The Iraqi state had completely lost control over the entire length of their borders with Syria and Jordan. And it was appearing that Baghdad itself, Iraq's capital and largest city home to more than 7 million people, an ancient seat of the medieval Abbasid Caliphate, was also on the brink of being captured and sacked. American embassy staff were hastily shredding documents and making preparations to evacuate to safety, while ISIS suddenly made a triumphant announcement that after they seized control over Baghdad, they were going to continue their advance towards two of the holiest cities in Shia Islam next, Karbala and Najaf, along the banks of the Euphrates River. Were that to happen, Iraq's most significant oil fields in the southeast of the country would be directly exposed to the next phase of ISIS's advance, putting 8% of the world's known reserves of oil in jeopardy of falling into the hands of the world's most extremist and totalitarian regime. Foreign oil companies that had begun operations in Iraq following the toppling of Saddam began making preparations to abandon their industries and evacuate all their staff. The global price of oil began to spike over the fears of what would happen next, and international attention increasingly began being focused on what ISIS was doing. On the 13th Ali Sistani declared a general call to arms amongst the Shia in Iraq against the advancing wave of ISIS Sunni militants. In less than 24 hours, the Grand Ayatollah's plea mobilized an entire division's worth of Shiite militiamen who, knowing what would happen to them if they lost against ISIS, were far less likely to surrender or flee in comparison to the Iraqi military. The swelling numbers of Shiite militiamen in Iraq were further bolstered by additional soldiers and supplies coming into Iraq from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, and their Quds Force, essentially Iran's version of the CIA, but at the time, by Qasem Soleimani, the man who would mastermind Iran's military intervention in Iraq against the rise of ISIS. After weeks of ferocious fighting, the Iranian IRGC and its coordinated Shiite militia groups, along with elements of the main Iraqi army, were all able to hold the line in Baghdad and finally blunted ISIS's advance from going any deeper into Iraq. At the same time, the Syrian Air Force began conducting airstrikes against ISIS targets in Iraq for the very first time beginning on the 24th of June 2014, further restricting ISIS's ability to push any further towards Baghdad. Nonetheless, the following month in July of 2014, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi seized the opportunity to declare the establishment of a new Islamic caliphate in the 8 centuries-old Grand Mosque of Mosul, over which he himself made a newly self-declared caliph. Henceforth, his regime would no longer be referring to itself as merely the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, but as simply the Islamic State, or IS, self-claiming to be the rightful successor to the historical Islamic caliphates of the past, like the Rashidun, the Umayyad, the Abbasid, and the Ottomans. Al-Baghdadi and IS were now claiming authority over all Muslims worldwide.
Hi, beautiful.
No recurrent geopolitical borders or boundaries. The new Islamic State's area of control was to be expanded by force from its current core in Iraq and Syria to eventually cover the entire Islamic world. And from there, the rest of the earth. A map was released by the organization showing their targets of conquest over the next 5 years, spanning all of the lands that had once been ruled by the historical caliphates of the past, and other areas that had major Islamic communities and populations. This ambition would have required wars of conquest be waged against the likes of NATO, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, and India. Significant military powers armed with thousands of nuclear weapons. That was a goal that was hopelessly optimistic at best and schizophrenically delusional at worst. For an organization that had just been blunted in their advance on Baghdad by the Iranians and their Iraqi Shiite militias. Nonetheless, IS was at this point a major de facto state. The self-declared caliphate ruled over a population base of somewhere between 8 and 12 million people, and extended over an amount of land nearly equal to half of Great Britain. Its fighters were extremely well armed and very highly motivated, and they were attracting tens of thousands of new foreign fighters coming from all over the world who wanted to come and join the expansion of the new Islamic State. They also had more funding than any other terror organization in modern history. In addition to the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cash they had pillaged from the banks in Mosul, IS's conquests had also placed it in control over the majority of Syria's oil fields and a significant amount of Iraq's oil fields as well. IS was able to continue producing oil out of many of these fields at a decreased rate, and then sold the oil across its territory into the Assad regime in Syria, while more was being discreetly sold abroad to unscrupulous buyers looking for a discount. IS was also collecting taxes from the millions of people it now found itself ruling over, and they were receiving millions of dollars worth of donations from sympathizers abroad. All in all, IS was now earning somewhere in the ballpark of $1 billion a year, making it the most well-funded terror organization of modern times. That meant that IS could pay their fighters higher wages and provide them with better and more sophisticated weapons than any other rival organization, like Al-Qaeda, ever could. And the scale of IS's victories up to that point also gave it a level of prestige that no other radical
come here, baby.
had ever been capable of achieving. Al-Qaeda was a powerful organization, yes, but it was not a state, while IS now controlled a vast swath of effective territory and multiple major cities. And they still weren't done with expanding their territory even further.
Clear.
In the advance on Baghdad, but undeterred with continuing their conquest.
We can't go out right now.
In Syria to the west and within Iraq to the north, deeper into the semi-autonomous Iraqi Kurdistan region. By August of 2014,
I'm sorry, baby. We can't go out right now.
The Sinjar district of Iraq's Nineveh.
No.
One of the major population centers of the Yazidi people. The Yazidis were a minority ethnic and religious group indigenous to this part of Kurdistan. pre-Islamic Zoroastrian faith that is completely different from the Abrahamic faiths like Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. As such, militant and extremist Sunni Muslim ideology of ISIS had no tolerance for such religion to exist. And so they labeled all of the Yazidis as devil worshippers. And as ISIS began expanding into the Yazidi lands, they began initiating a ruthless genocide against them. On the 3rd of August, ISIS captured the town of Sinjar. As the Iraqi military and the Kurdish Peshmerga self-defense forces
Hey, beautiful.
ISIS fighters began immediately demanding that all of the Yazidis falling beneath their rule immediately convert to Sunni Islam or face instant summary execution. And many probably weren't even given a choice. In a systematic fashion, ISIS death squads began prowling from village to village in the Sinjar area, rounding up everyone they could find. The men and boys were separated from the women and girls, lined up on the side of the road, and then immediately shot with machine gun and rifle fire, and then bulldozed into mass graves. Other Yazidi men were forced into crowded Yazidi temples, and then either blown up or set on fire or still inside. And the fate of the Yazidi women and girls who were separated were even worse. IS suddenly announced that they were reviving the institution of slavery within the lands that they ruled over. The Yazidi women and girls they began capturing were all forced into this revived sexual slavery. Many were given to ISIS fighters as forced brides, while others were treated as nothing more than cattle, yet given to ISIS fighters as slaves to be exploited and traded. Slave markets dealing in the trade of captured Yazidi women and girls were opened up by ISIS in the occupied cities of Mosul and Raqqa, where women and girls as young as 3 were paraded around with price tags around their necks for men to buy and abuse as their personal slaves. Many others were sold as sexual slaves to buyers in Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and other Gulf Arab states. In total, ISIS would go on to massacre around 5,000 mostly Yazidi men in their conquest, and enslaved around 10,000 mostly women and girls. They abducted and pressed into sexual slavery all across the world. Hundreds of thousands of other Yazidis, without protection of their own and fearing for their lives, began to flee from their homes in a desperate panic to escape before it was all too late. By the 6th of August, 50,000 of these fleeing Yazidis trying to escape into the surrounding Sinjar mountains. Instead, found themselves completely trapped on the top of one of the mountains, surrounded by ISIS fighters beneath them. The 50,000 Yazidi civilians had no weapons, no food, no water, and no medical supplies. They were facing off against thousands of well-armed and fanatical ISIS fighters all around them who wanted to see them all killed or enslaved. A massacre of historic proportions was on the brink of taking place, and it was finally then, at that moment, that the Obama administration in the United States decided that enough was enough. The Obama administration had been resisting getting itself involved in the wars in Syria and Iraq for years. The United States had been burned out by the experiences in Afghanistan and Iraq, and there was little appetite among the American public for getting involved in yet another war in the Middle East. But now, in order to prevent the nearly certain annihilation of 50,000 Yazidi civilians, Barack Obama authorized the first American airstrikes against ISIS targets threatening the Yazidis on the 7th of August, 2014. American fighter jets quickly began flying in and bombing ISIS armored columns threatening the Yazidis up on the mountain, and more jets flew in to deliver the Yazidis themselves supplies. Following up the American airstrikes, Kurdish militia groups like the PKK and the YPG moved in themselves on the ground to break through the weakened and bombed out ISIS supply lines. In the end, nearly all of the Yazidi civilians were spared from certain death and evacuated from the mountain into the Kurdish-controlled parts of Syria. The military intervention of the United States against ISIS had begun, and with it marked the beginning of ISIS's long, drawn-out fall that would play out over the next 5 years. Far from going on to conquer and subjugate the world after their 2014 victories, ISIS would be steadily beaten back and eventually lose every last square inch of land that they had so ruthlessly conquered. Their unprecedented violence and brutality and desire to radically change the geopolitical status quo would eventually bring together the largest international coalition seen in modern history to stop them, on a scale never seen since the coalition to stop Nazi Germany during the Second World War. The fall of ISIS will be the subject of the next episode here on Modern Conflicts. And as always, thank you for watching this on Nebula.
Tired, boo-boos.